Pete's house in Baltimore. We'll see if Joe Flacco is going to get under center next week against Cincinnati Bengals. I will be on the scene. Luke will be on the backfields for all things Ravens. But right now, the Orioles are the story as they've surged, and they are truly magical here of late, beginning with the weekend sweep of the Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park, taking on the Mariners, then Toronto, and then we'll see the Yankees next week in a huge homestand, largest homestand in some memory when it comes to really jockeying for a position here among 7 teams in the American League. This guy is one of our old pals, one of the professors of baseball knowledge around here, and the writer of all writings and longtime ESPN baseball insider, now living in Portland, Oregon, and doing radio anytime we ask him to because he loves the game of baseball. We welcome Rob Nyer back onto the program. You can follow his journey on Twitter at Rob Nyer. Dude, Labor Day, Orioles still in it. Who knew you were going to get this phone call from me, right?
Yes, I mean, this is a season. I don't know if we've seen one like this. Maybe somebody's done a study. I haven't seen it. To have this many teams and this many pretty mediocre teams be in the hunt this late in the season, all bunched so closely together, is, as far as I can remember, unprecedented. And I think it's fun. I don't know how excited the fans are for it. I think that the wild card fever has always been vastly overstated by the powers that be, and especially Commissioner Bud Selig. Probably to this day, he's still probably having daily fantasies about the wild card. But just as a for the most part, an outsider, although I do follow the Mariners pretty closely, I think it's a lot of fun to see this many crummy teams still be in the hunt.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking, as a football guy, we were talking about the year when the NFC South, all the teams were, 6-8, and we're like, somebody's got to win the division, right? And, when we've seen this in the past where some divisions have been down, I mean, the NL Central was always like whoever could play 5-15 ball, somebody might be able to steal that, and the Cardinals were always the ones doing it. But, I'll say this. This 7-team race and where these teams are and all of their deficiencies. Look, I mean, we've seen the Mariners and the Orioles play this week. We saw them play 2 weeks ago. There are deficiencies everywhere, from the way they run the bases to what their pitching looks like, to how streaky their hitting is, to the kind of hitting they get. Nothing traditional what you and I are used to in taking pitches and drawing walks and getting guys in scoring. It's a little bit messy. I mean, the Mariners has been brought on more by pitching injuries to their best players. The Orioles is just bad pitching that keeps repeatedly being bad pitching. The Rays have had some of their old problems sort of bear up, but the Twins have been the team this week. I mean, they're the team everybody's on all of a sudden, and they were the sellers 4 weeks ago, man.
They were, and they were also, as I think most of us can remember, they lost 103 games last year.
Yeah.
And while a lot of folks loved their young talent, it wasn't supposed to happen this quickly. And in fact, they have been outscored by a lot of runs this season. They shouldn't be where they are in the standings. They shouldn't be in the running, but they are. And it won't be shocking if they wind up winning a wild card. I still think it's unlikely, if only because they really aren't that talented. Chances are the Yankees get one of the wild cards, and one of the more talented teams gets the other. And the Twins' pitching is terribly thin once you get past Irvin Santana. And the Twins' hitting really isn't that good once you get past Byron Buxton, who's been great since late April. But they have a shot, just like all those other teams have a shot.
On pedigree alone, Rob, the Orioles and the Royals, specifically the Royals, would get some points here, right? I mean, even an Ubaldo Jimenez, who, has wet down his leg at various points, has pitched in World Series games. All of the key relievers from the Orioles, all their key starting players from Machado and Jones, they've all seen a bright light or 2 or 3 in some cases in October. That's got to play into this from the Kansas City side of one more time putting the band back together. Now, the Orioles next year will be their year to put the band together because they didn't trade Machado or Britton at the trading deadline, and it doesn't appear as though they will. And the longer they hang in here this year, the better it'll be deodorized in the offseason, and they will try to find pitchers who can start games to a sub-7 ERA to get into the rotation for next year. I don't know that there's any pitchers out in the marketplace or where they're wanting to go, but they certainly have willed themselves into this thing. And even if there is some catastrophic collapse, and it doesn't appear that ever happens when they're at home, and they're home for the next week and a half, you could still say we were in it. I mean, we had a real season because right now, once you get above 500 the week of Labor Day, and you can say we're within a sniff of wild card berth, which they are at this point, then there's no disputing that it was, I don't want to say a successful season, but at least a real season. And we had a lot of years around here, Rob, as you know, where there was no season, not even in April.
I think if you are a real fan, not the kind of fan who goes to a game or two a year and tunes in when they're in first place, but a real fan, many of whom listen to your show, it's got to be considered a successful season, an entertaining season. I can remember, this goes back a long ways, but I remember in 1984, well, first of all, 85, when my favorite team, the Royals, won the World Series. That was an amazingly entertaining season for me. But just as entertaining until the very end was the 84 season, when the Royals were not very good, but heading into September, they were one of three, maybe it was four not very good teams that had a chance at winning the AL West. Basically, you had 3 or 4 teams that were right around 500. Nobody great, even particularly good, but had a shot. And I can tell you that September of 84 was about as much fun as I've ever had as a baseball fan, because every game seemed like it was the most important game I ever listened to on the radio. And it was so much fun. And I think that if you are a fan right now of the Mariners or the Orioles or the Royals or the Angels or the Rangers, this is kind of what you live for if you're a real fan, where you don't know what's going to happen. But what you do know is that tonight's game feels like it's amazingly important, and it's possible, sure, unlikely, but possible, that maybe at the very end of this thing, your team wins the World Series. To me, that's what being a sports fan, certainly a baseball fan, is all about. It's that the day-to-day drama with every game feeling that way. And I'm jealous. I wish I was still a fan of, like I used to be, where I cared that much.
Well, and I think we've all gotten a little jaded in that case. Rob Nyer joining us here. He is, of course, Rob Nyer, out on Twitter and writing about more important things in sports lately, getting outside of the toy department, and we'll get to that when the Houston story comes up later in the conversation. But, from the baseball perspective, and in a season where not much has gone right, from the Orioles' perspective, to bloody the nose of the Red Sox the way they did over the weekend, and I don't know that the Yankees are ever going to get up here, and I do know this, the separator between ownership, money, property, value, belongings in the minor leagues, the ability to sign international players, all of that factored in, I am very worried as an Orioles fan about what the next 5 years looks like, and this may be as good as it gets, and having this group of players and having a generational player like Machado who's, played the way he has, and Tim Beckham, who's made Dan Duquette look like a savant here on the backside of this deal. This is a pretty rarefied place to be, but punching the Red Sox over the weekend up there, I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No, I don't think so. It just goes to show you what can happen in one series between two baseball teams, and that's why if you are a fan of the Royals or the Orioles or the Mariners, you have to have some hope that not only, obviously, you have a shot at a wild card, but you have a shot at more than a wild card. Because I don't care if you are a 500 team, you can't beat a 550 team or a 590 team in a 3-game series or a 5-game series or a 7-game series. It happened. It's happened many, many times. in October in the past. And when you look at, for example, the Orioles, and yes, you've got Chris Tillman with a 7.91 ERA or whatever it might be today. That's pretty shocking to go from where he was not so long ago to where he is now. But you know that somewhere buried inside there is a pretty good pitcher who might pop out when you need him the most, i.e. in October. So
you know what's crazy about that is his ERA's 8 and they keep giving him the ball. I mean, that's unprecedented, right, Rob? I mean, you have guys that have had bad records and, we're chasing the 20-loss column because their team stinks and their ERA's 4.5 and they didn't get run support or whatever. I'll hear all your Omar Dahl stories and whatnot, but, this is – they have no one else to pitch, Rob. It's kind of unbelievable. They give away their international signing money. At the trading deadline, most astute baseball observers would have looked at this and said, you have no chance of re-signing Machado. This is a time to go start to fleece the Red Sox, fleece the Yankees. They would love Machado right now. Get 4 prospects back, make your best deal, and go do something here. And they didn't. And instead, here we are talking about them. I don't think that they're we can go pie in the sky and talk about a parade here and, all of the things that could happen in October. But where they are right now is at least in the season. And, under that, I celebrate for that. But I do worry about what the long-term ramifications of short-sighted decisions that lead you to one game over 500 and how good you can feel about that in the end if you don't get a parade out of all of this.
Well, there's no question. I don't know if you need a parade, but I think you need to be playing meaningful baseball in mid to late September if you make that decision. I think you're right. It's hard for me. I have no insight into the Tillman situation. You have to hope that the organization sees something physically in Tillman that simply isn't showing up in his numbers. I mean, there's a similar situation in Kansas City where the Royals continue to throw Alex Gordon out there every day, even though he's arguably been the worst player in the American League this season. I look at Alex Gordon's numbers and I think, well, there must be something wrong physically, or he wouldn't be doing what he's doing. And you hope that they're not playing him every day simply because they're paying him an immense amount of money, because otherwise he's just hurting the team. And management is hurting the team by playing him every day. I mean, almost anybody from AAA would be better than this unless Gordon is healthy enough to play better all of a sudden. And you obviously hope the same thing with Tillman because he's been far worse, obviously, than even your average AAA starting pitcher. So you do have to wonder. You have to hope management knows what they're doing. But if you get to the end of the season and things haven't gotten better, then you really have to wonder if management knows what they're doing.
He is Rob Neyer. He is the writer of writings and can be followed at Rob Neyer out on Twitter. He is a 2 decades now defending champion of all things baseball and baseball knowledge here as we head into this. This is fun, dude. I didn't really think I'd be on the phone with you right now, discussing this sort of a race, and I've made this a very personal thing for all of my baseball buddies. I'm going to give you one mythical WNST dollar to wager on one of these 7 teams, assuming that you do like the Yankees in, and keeping in mind how special it would be if somehow the Orioles inch their way into this and get 9 innings of extended Game 7 style baseball, winner take all at Yankee Stadium, 24 hours after the season ends. That would be pretty delicious in early October. That would be nice. But there are 7 teams in this thing. You got a dollar, Rob. Who you putting it on, man?
I'd probably choose the Mariners for this reason. If they can just hold on for another week or so, 2 weeks, they are supposed to have James Paxton, who's on the DL, and Felix Hernandez, who's on the DL, back in the rotation. And you give the Mariners Paxton and Hernandez, they probably have the best rotation among all these guys we've been talking about. And they've also, by the way, got a pretty good lineup. it's hard to believe the Mariners are actually, a really good hitting team, which they haven't been for a long time. When they have everybody healthy, they can score runs with Cano and Kyle Seager and Nelson Cruz and Mike Zunino, and they can pitch when those guys are healthy. But, you mentioned earlier, their starting rotation's been a disaster this season, injury-wise. But if they fix that, they look, to me, like the most talented team out there. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything when you're down to your last 2 or 3 weeks, but I think they are the most talented after you get past the Yankees.
For the National League and for where this thing is with the Dodgers, I mean, this is really otherworldly, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm saving Houston for the end because I think it's its own story unto itself in so many ways, and I know you do as well because I do follow you and your conscience on Twitter. But the Dodger thing from a baseball perspective, and Rob, it's funny you would mention 1984 earlier to me because that was an awful summer for me, right? After 83, the Tigers got off to this 35-5 start. They came into 33rd Street at Memorial Stadium and beat our asses. I mean, they just kicked our noses in and, got off to this ridiculous start, ran away and hid. And the Dodgers have kind of done that, but done that amidst lots of issues and lots of troubles. And right now, they're just sort of showing off, right? I mean, they're just winning because they can. But this is a pretty special thing, but it doesn't mean much, until game one. And like I've said about the Cubs last year and any of these dominant teams, I mean, the Mariners that we're hearing so much about from 2001, you better win game one. You better win game one.
Well, it ties in like the Dodgers will just steamroll everybody in their wake. The Tigers, you could argue, did that in '84, although the Royals gave them actually 2 really tight games in the playoffs before they went on to beat the Padres, I think in 5 games in the World Series. The Mariners in 2001 lost the ALCS. The Yankees, when they won 114 games, they played really well in October, but they didn't just destroy everybody. It's not that easy. The Cubs certainly didn't destroy everybody last year. They could easily have lost not only to the Indians, but before that in the playoffs. No, it probably won't be easy for the Dodgers. They will be big favorites going into the World Series and deserve to be.
And it doesn't really buy you any advantage showing off right now, though, right? You know what I mean? Like, and it really takes a special intensity to be able to do this, right?
Well, sure, but I think they'll have that. I think the Dodgers, especially when you consider their disappointments in the past playoffs. I mean, it's not like the Dodgers are coming out of nowhere. They've been in the playoffs, 4 or 5 years in a row now. So they've been there, and they've been disappointing, and people have wondered if they can win. So they'll be highly motivated. I don't have any issues with that. They just have to play better than they've played before, and they have to be healthy. Who knows if Clayton Kershaw will be healthy? Right now he's on the DL. He's expected back. He's coming back soon, and probably will be great in October, but we won't know until we see it. So it's not a fait accompli at all. This isn't the 75 Reds or 76 Reds where you just assume they're going to go and blow everybody away in October. It doesn't work that way anymore.
Well, there's no doubt about that. One-game playoffs and pitching matchups and bullpens and weather conditions and all of the stuff that goes into this. And certainly the Houston story is larger than life in every way. And, look, the Ravens are playing the Saints this week, Rob. And, I was down there right on the front end of Katrina. I was one of the first to get the hell out of New Orleans. It was one of the great decisions of my life. And my wife and I talk about it all the time, what great fortune we had to not be there. And the Houston thing happens. The football team, the baseball team, they had a LSU game that was going to be played there this week. They're going to be years, if not decades, cleaning up and who knows what. But for the Astros, they were the streaking team. They were the darlings of the American League. And now their road is going to be very, very different through all of this, and I think it's changed the complexion of baseball over the next month, as well as the city of Houston and maybe even the city of Dallas before this is all over with.
Right. Well, we have no idea what the Astros schedule is going to look like. I think the assumption was a week ago that, sure, they might have to reschedule or play a few games somewhere else, but now who knows? I haven't seen any updated forecasts for their season, But if their ballpark is basically on an island, not too far from the heart of downtown, when do they go back? When do they play there again? I don't know. All I can say now is that they'll probably be sentimental darlings for the rest of this season, deservedly so. But beyond that, I don't think we can say anything about the Astros, except this: whatever else happens, they probably are the best team in the American League. I really believe that. And you look at their run differential; it's the best in the league. It will probably be the best in the league at season's end, although the Astros or the Indians are certainly pushing them for that honor. But they're really good, and they will be sentimental favorites, much as, I don't know if they were back then, but in 1968, the Tigers were considered, something that the city to some degree was able to rally around, and certainly we've seen that with the Saints in the NFL a few years ago in the wake of Katrina. And I don't know, it's hard not to pull for the Astros the rest of the way.
He is Rob Nair, the writer of writings, I should say. And so, wait, where are you putting your chip in this thing, Rob, in the end? I mean, Red Sox not so much, Yankees not so much lately. Cleveland's been very quiet. And then you have the whole wild card mess happening over in the American League and over in the National League. It's Dodgers running away, and the Cubs have been the quiet sort of, they're going to have to wake up and play them in October and go to Wrigley Field and try to figure out how to win games and do that if you're the Nationals or the Dodgers, which was difficult to do last year, as well as the two wild cards out in the National League now in Arizona and Colorado getting a taste of this. I mean, I know the Dodgers will be the big favorite in all of this, but do you have a little darling in your mind at this point, or a little strength in one of these teams that none of the rest of us see?
Not really. I think that what we've seen is what we're going to see. I do think the Cubs are probably a little better than their run differential. They've certainly underperformed for most of the season. But the Nationals are really good. Nobody pays attention to the Nationals because Dodgers have been so tremendous. But the Nationals in a normal year would look like a tremendous team. And the talent is certainly there. We've seen them underperform, just like we've seen the Dodgers underperform. One of those teams is probably going to, I would assume one of those teams wins the World Series, or at least wins the National League, and put some of that disappointment to rest. But who knows? Would we be shocked if the Cubs win again? No. What I really would like to see, though, is the Diamondbacks or the Rockies do something impressive, because they both have come out of nowhere, left for dead before the season, basically, because they were so lousy last year. And who knows? Maybe the Brewers wind up with a wild card. That's not impossible. They also weren't supposed to do anything. In fact, they're still in striking distance of the Cubs, which maybe we didn't expect a few weeks ago. I'd love to see an NL Central race go down to the wire. That's really what I'm paying attention to, along with the AL wild card.
Rob, always good to visit with you. Last thing for you, because I've done laundry and uniforms this week, and I know what a nerdy fan you are, like I am, and probably a lover of the Astros 1980 Starburst jerseys as well, but I don't know what those pajamas were over the weekend, and I'm sure they're coming back because the Players Association probably wants swaggy tee, amongst other things, on the back of jerseys, and Mr. Miami on Manny Machado, which was almost like a sign me Marlins please on the back of his Orioles uniform. I think it's too much. I've talked at length about it. Maybe I've talked about it with you. I think these 3-day weekends of blue and pink and military and your red, white, and blue and throwback, it's too much. I mean, I like it all individual. I like the Jackie Robinson thing. I don't like watching the games that night where everybody's wearing a 42 because I can't tell who the players are. So for me, there's a functional nature of the uniforms that I really like, aside from the lore or the nostalgia or the glamour or the swaggy tee or whatever it is. I just like to know who's playing the game. Maybe that makes me a get off my lawn guy, but it feels like a good time to bitch about the uniforms and this weird cash grab, because I understand cash grabs for things that actually make a lot of money. I don't know that they're getting rich off of these pajamas they wear. I think they're sort of devalue the whole thing a little bit to me. That's my opinion.
Well, look, for me, it's pretty simple. Just as a fan, the jersey, the normal the regular uniforms were designed with great care by people whose job was essentially to create something attractive, something aesthetically pleasing. I mean, that's why they are what they are, right?
Sure.
That's why you wear them. Not too long ago, you wear those uniforms roughly 160 times a year. Or maybe 81 your roads, 81 your home.
It's your identifier. It's what makes you look like a Major League Baseball player and not like some clown act community college beer league softball team. You know, literally.
That's right. And all these other uniforms that are worn for so many different occasions now, and not just for a game, as you point out, but for 3 games, they're not designed to be aesthetically pleasing. They're designed to promote something. Well, why would I want to look at something that's used to promote something? Why would I want to drive down a highway that's covered with billboards from end to end? And the answer is I don't want to do that. So I'm with you. And in fact, I simply don't watch games on television when they're doing these weekends. I listen on the radio, and I enjoy it that way. And that's fine, too. But these uniforms they're not designed for me. They're designed for children, and they're designed for people whose job it is to make money, to fulfill marketing goals. That's what the game is now, to some degree. I don't have to participate. I can listen on the radio, and so I do.
He is Rob Nyer, old school, and that's why we love him. And, hey, man, always appreciate following you out on Twitter and your journalism pursuits and your writing and anything to promote that you're working on right now. I like to not just talk baseball with you, but I know you're always working on something, man.
Oh, I am, but, nothing in particular. I urge people to go to my Facebook page and see the latest. I just did a podcast that I really enjoyed working on, and that's the best place to keep up with me.
Always great to have you on, Rob. Be well. Take care now.
You take care, buddy.
Stay cool out there in Portland, Oregon, nearby to the Seattle Mariners in their television viewing area. You can find Rob out there on Twitter at Rob Nyer, the writer of writings and baseball author and longtime insider and expert. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Happy Labor Day to everybody, getting up and on it and getting rid of the fake football, getting on to the real baseball. And on to Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and on to Cincinnati next week for hopefully Joe Flacco. If you're going to London next month, make sure you're looking us up. We are going to be doing our purple Fly Sky High over the River Thames to the O2 Arena where Led Zeppelin once reunited and played, which is pretty cool. We're going to be in the East London Docklands area, just off the tube, eating fish and chips, drinking pints beginning at 11 a.m. at the Foxhead XL. All the information up at WNST.net, and you can always email me because I am a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.